Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Red Chair series. I am so excited to feature Klarissa Skinner with us today. Klarissa, welcome to the Red Chair. We're so excited to have you.
Yes, thank you for having me today.
Absolutely. Well, start us off, Klarissa. Tell us a little bit about who you are and how you got into this real estate game.
Yep. So I'm Klarissa. I'm from Kansas City. I got in, crazy enough, 11 years ago,
Wow.
which is, I'm like, whoa, what happened? Where did time go? I actually got in because my mom was a real estate agent and she still is with Keller Williams, just 4 hours away from Kansas City. And she was like, hey, someone should service my clients. Like now that I'm not in Kansas City, like I could still have a seller that comes around or, she had a database. And I was like, "Oh, okay, like, that works." I wish I would have listened to her sooner because she wanted me to get in years before I
Oh,
ever got
wow.
into business, and I was just too busy, I don't know, college, partying, whatever I was doing back then, um, for that, and so I got in just as part-time. So I was part-time for a couple years, and then I ended up making more money part-time selling real estate than I did at my full-time job, and then I knew I had to leave
Yeah.
because there was potential there to make more money.
What,
That's
what was your first job? What job were you in at the time?
I actually was working across the street from our office here in Overland Park. I worked for the company that printed all the college gear for Nike. So I would handle the entire children's line. So if you bought something that was the Zoo Nike product, I had a hand in helping get that to the store.
Oh, neat. Okay.
Yeah.
So the first year in real estate, you had it literally part-time had made more money than your full-time
Yeah.
out of college job.
Yes.
I love that.
Yeah. And I sold a bunch of people their houses,
Yeah.
so that was a lot of the business. And then actually, I would have coworkers be like, why are you selling real estate full time? Like, why do you still work here? And for me, the comfort of knowing where my paycheck came from, like not knowing where my next check was coming from or when it was coming from was just too much for me to handle. So that's why I was able to do that. I saved all that money, right? So that's why when I did make the leap to go full time, I had a cushion, I had savings.
Yeah.
I'd also, since I had worked there quite a while before that, I had a ton of PTO and I was able to get paid for like 3 months after leaving. So in my mind, I had like a cushion.
You had some runway to
Yeah,
really give you
correct.
that.
Yeah. And fast forward 10 years, here I am.
I love that. Well, okay, well, 2 questions. Start with who is Klarissa outside of real estate? And then once you're done with that, tell us a little bit about your business, your investments, what you do.
Yep. So Clarissa outside of real estate is married to my
Okay.
husband, Joe. I have a dog named Duffy. I actually volunteer about 3 to 4 times a week.
Mm.
So I'm heavily involved with KC Pet Project and also Lawrence Humane. So every Friday I'm at Lawrence. Saturday and Sunday I actually volunteer lead the Dogs Day Out program at KC Pet Project. So you can come get a dog, take it out for a pup cup, chicken nuggets, take it for a walk,
Oh,
and come
cool.
back. So that's probably one of my proudest accomplishments is I help kind of gather volunteers that we help keep the program going. So like we'll send 30 dogs out on a Saturday. And so that way the foster and the staff can focus on getting dogs adopted while we send dogs on this program. And then I'm also just heavily involved in some other charity programs in Kansas City. I try to garden, but I'm like I usually overwater and then I end up killing the plants, but it's okay.
Different green thumb,
I
right?
try. For that, and then business-wise, single agent.
Okay.
I've been on teams before. Single agent is a life for me. A lot of people always ask, like, "Why don't you start a team?" I don't want the pressure of someone else's lifestyle or salary living on me. So I've kind of stuck that, and I primarily work with investors, and so that's a whole other animal
Sure.
into its own self. Primarily just people flipping or buying and hold. I usually work with a lot of my clients are out of state, so I have to do basically everything for them, like boots on the ground.
Yeah.
For that, I have scaled back a little bit because my business has also turned more into managing my own personal investments as well. So I haven't done as many transactions, but I still plan to sell real estate
So give us a snapshot, like how many units roughly, volume, just some basic figures so everybody kinda has a glimpse into
Yeah,
your
so
world.
there for a little bit, I was tracking about 100 units a year for quite a few years. I stepped away to help with KW Wealth, which was a community at KW. So I kind of scaled back and did like 65 units. And now I'm kind of maintaining that 50 to 60 units. Now I might go back. I stepped away from KW Wealth, so I might ramp that back up again. But now I'm spending half my time managing my own personal investment portfolio.
Awesome.
So, yeah.
Well, give us a snapshot of what that looks like, Clarissa.
So it's all over the place. So you ready for that? Ready. Okay. So I am a general partner on apartment complex deals, meaning I am part of the management team. I help to raise the money, fund the deal, all of that. So with that, I'm currently helping manage about almost $100 million worth of
Mhm.
real estate. Most of those are in South Carolina and Georgia. That is about 750 units for about 100 million. And then on the flip side of that, I'm also invested in about 1,500 doors as a limited partner, meaning I'm in someone else's deal.
Okay.
Then I also have multiple oil and gas joint venture investments. I love those because they diversify. The tax benefits for those are great. Cash flow is great. And guess what? There's no tenants and no toilets.
I love no
So it's great.
no
I love
toilets.
my tenants and toilets, but it's also great to have stuff that is not doesn't have a tenant or a toilet. And then I also have a handful of out of state rentals. I have North Carolina, Oklahoma, Tennessee, Alabama. I have them kind of all over. And then I have some other stuff like I do hard money lending out of my self directed 401k. I've done some other interest rate arbitrage stuff. That isn't as strong as some of the first items that I talked about, but I am super big on making sure that I have multiple streams of income. So if one thing falls,
Yeah.
there's other things to balance it out. And just because you don't want to, I don't like to put all my eggs in one basket.
Sure.
I don't love commitment sometimes. So I like to have it coming in and just different streams of income.
Oh, that's smart.
Yeah.
Well, what I really wanted to unpack with you today is how agents begin to think about money. And we know it from being in real estate that it's so easy to get to jump into this business, make a bunch of money, and then poof, it's tax time or expenses roll around and you're broke.
Yeah. So that I wasn't broke, but the reason why I got so laser focused on investments and understanding my kind of philosophy around wealth building and what that looked like was one year I sold 120 units. I made north of $500,000. And then the tax bill came around
Mm,
and it was six figures. And I was like, that was a lot of effort and a lot of,
yeah.
headaches and late nights and not eating lunch for me to pay that much in taxes. And one thing I have done and mentors have taught me along the way is like put yourself in the right rooms and listen to the right people. So I was listening to the podcast, I was in the right rooms, and I knew something wasn't right.
Mm,
Like I was like, other people are saying that they don't have to pay taxes. So like, why do I have to pay so much? And so that year, after I took about 5 days and I just cried and cried and cried. And then after that, I was like, never again will this ever happen to me. Never again. So I listened to every podcast, read every book. I even read the tax code so that I could understand because I knew I was never going to get ahead
yeah.
if I had to pay that much in taxes. And why would I sell that many houses again if that's what was going to happen?
Sure.
Knowing. So I got real clear that I also had to look kind of inside because I was just hoarding money,
Mm,
right? I was making all this money and I was just like, this is so great, but I wasn't actually doing anything with it. And when you don't do anything with it, guess what happens? The government takes it.
that's
Um,
right.
so I quickly learned like, okay, my investment philosophy change. Actually, back up. I also had to figure out why I couldn't pull the trigger because I worked with investors all day, every day. I saw the benefits of real estate.
Mm,
I saw the benefits of investing. And so I actually had to like kind of take some internal work there. And I realized that I could not buy in Kansas City because I was too emotionally attached to Kansas City and I would talk myself right out of a deal. So that's why everything I own is out of state. Most everything I've never seen and I probably will never see because then it was a business decision, right? It was like,
right.
do the numbers work? Right, and I still do due diligence, like, don't get me wrong, like, I did inspections. I also not you've heard me say this is not, like, professional advice. I only buy properties and apartment buildings that are within a 15-minute drive to a Chick-fil-A and a drive-through Starbucks, not the one in the Target, but a drive-through Starbucks because I know they spend millions and millions of dollars on population
Yeah.
studies. So I know that the population has grown 20% over the last 10 years if they're putting a Chick-fil-A and a drive-through Starbucks. So I know, plus I also want my tenants to be able to have access to a Starbucks and a Chick-fil-A for that. So that's something that I also, I've turned down deals because
There
there wasn't a Chick-fil-A, right?
that's no smart.
For that. So I had to internally figure that out. I had to figure out like why I couldn't let
Mm.
go of the money or what that looked like. So one thing I always tell people if they're struggling with that is read the book Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel because it understands, we all grow up differently. We're being taught about money, trauma around money, all of that. So it kind of teaches you like why you make decisions you do and why other people make the decisions they do. I also always suggest season 2 of the CEO podcast with Gary Keller and Jay Papasan. They actually have Morgan Housel on there, and it's all about figuring out your money philosophy and your wealth building philosophy. So I always recommend that as well. So once I kind of figured that out, it was just, I went gangbusters and was just in all sorts of deals, picking up houses, all of that. But what I actually start with is the tax savings.
Mm.
So I invest first to save money on taxes. I haven't paid tax since that time. I've gotten a refund for the last 6 years,
Wow.
right? Who can say that?
I love that.
Yeah, so I get a refund and this is all legit.
Sure.
We're not playing any funny games because I'm a rule follower, so I'm not playing any funny games. I just play the rules that the government gave us, and they want people to help invest in real estate, right? Like they will give you benefits to things that they need help with
That's right.
for that.
Well, I think what you said too, I love you're investing for the tax purpose.
And it all cash flows, right? So it's
Sure.
still cash flows, but I'm investing first for the tax
Right.
savings. Yeah.
And most people don't look at a deal that way at all. They look at it for cash flow appreciation, ROI, but you're
Yeah.
going into it going, how do I pull down my tax liabilities
Yep.
first?
And now it still does all the other things, cash flow, appreciation, all of that. But I'm really making sure that am I making enough investments with tax benefits so that I am either at zero or get a refund.
Wow.
I mean, I don't love getting a refund either because there's some money that must have been lent at some point, but that's important to me because if I'm not paying money in taxes, that means it's going towards my wealth building.
That's right. And you're
Yeah.
just earmarking that 20-30% and putting it over here.
Yep. Every time I get paid, it used to be higher. So every time I got a commission check, I would put 40% into a high yield savings account that was meant for taxes. But at the end of the year, when I wouldn't have to pay taxes, it becomes like a flywheel. Like eventually it catches up with itself. So now when I don't have to pay taxes, I use that money I have saved for taxes to buy investments for the next year that offset, right? So I'm like,
Oh, wow.
it's
Okay.
just eventually a flywheel that
Sure.
creates itself. Yeah.
So you take that money that you've earmarked and then you buy an asset with it every 2 to 3 years, depending on
Yeah.
your liabilities that year. I love that. It's brilliant.
Yeah.
Well, Clarissa, let's jump in to kind of the agent game
Yep.
and the agent world. Let's start out with your traditional agent closing 10 to 12 deals a year. What advice would you give them looking at 2026 to set up their taxes and their business moving forward?
So the first thing is, right, we all kind of start and we're like, this is fun. We sold 5 houses our first year. And I feel like a lot of times we don't treat it like a business. We treat it as a hobby. When I first started, I get it. Now, luckily I had people around me that helped me make sure I was kind of set up. So I don't care if it's under an LLC at first, but it needs to be a separate bank account.
Yep.
Right? We're not commingling funds. One, you're going to create bad habits. Two, when it's time to do tax time, it's a hot mess express, right? You don't want to do that. So I don't even necessarily care if it's under an LLC, but at least it needs to be a separate bank account, right? And then from that, once you've hit a certain point, now I don't know, everyone's tax liability and tax situation is different. So they need to talk with a CPA. And once you've sold enough in real estate, you should not be filing your own taxes, right?
Right.
This needs to be a professional helping you, right? We're professionals as real estate agents. It's too complicated, right? And you don't want to cross any fine lines. You also might not know like what you can and cannot do. I see so many times where people are like, "Oh, I don't track my mileage." What do you mean you don't track your mileage? Right? That's like like the number one thing that you should be tracking. Or that's the other thing. They don't track expenses and they don't track the appropriate ones, right? Like if we go to conferences like Keller Williams Family Reunion, that's a write off. Now, the other thing is just because it's a write off doesn't mean you should spend the money,
Right.
right? I hear this all the time. Well, it's a write off. Well, no,
I'm gonna buy a car.
yeah,
Right?
don't even get it's buying a Range Rover the last day of the year is not a tax strategy. I like to tell people that, especially when you finance that and you drive it off the lot and 3 minutes later you're actually upside down on the Land Rover. Like that is not a tax strategy that anyone
No.
should be using. Now, if you need a new car,
Sure.
by all means, I'm all about it. Should you be financing it? No, right? So I feel like for that kind of in the middle, one, make sure you have a separate bank account,
'Kay.
a P&L. It does not need to be lead with revenue. It can literally be a spreadsheet. I used a spreadsheet for many years,
Yeah.
probably just 3 or 4 years ago did I switch to having another bookkeeper. I also think sometimes people leverage this out way too soon,
Hmm.
right? I'm all about leverage, but it was important for me to sit down every month and do my P&L and put those numbers in the spreadsheet so that I could understand
Where your money's going.
what I'm doing,
Yeah.
right? Because we all have shiny object syndrome and we're like, "Oh, this is the next new thing and we're going to pay for this." Um for that. And then once you get there, right, at that time you might still have a W-2 or like a spouse, right? And then you do hit a point where it's time to possibly explore being an S corp and saving on that self-employment taxes and going from there. And then you do hit a point where you need to figure out how to offset that active income.
Where would you say that threshold kind of lives, Clarissa?
I would say if you make like 100,000.
Okay. So once you're around that GCI wise, then the S corp obviously makes sense.
And sometimes they say like 75 plus, but I would say like 100,000. It probably needs to be discussion with your CPA on like, what is this a benefit or not, right? And a lot of people don't even know what to ask, but they never even try to research what they need to ask, right? They just rely on everyone else to tell them and then get mad when
they have to pay $100,000 in tax.
Yeah, and I couldn't believe it. Like that is when I also learned that the CPA I was using, she was a great CPA.
Yeah.
She was not a great CPA for the business I was in and what I wanted to do. So I learned the hard way that tax strategy is actually an investment.
That's right.
Right? And guess what? Your CPA, whether they save you 50,000 or you owe 50,000, you pay them the same amount of money if they're just preparing your taxes. So I then realized, hey, it was time to change. And I, like, for a little bit, took over my own tax strategy and said, hey, here's what we're going to do. Right? And a lot of people, they just get no. And if they tell you no, and I'm not saying break the law, right? That's not what I'm saying. But sometimes you just need to change the facts or say, well, how could I do that? Right? Like, how can I make this happen? Right? Because a lot of people are going to say no, but it's like, well,
how do I qualify to be a real estate professional?
Yeah. How do I qualify? Or how do I use the Augusta rule? Or how do I write off this? Or how do I pay my children? Right? These are things that the government allows us to do that you might get pushback on, but you just need to ask how, how can I make this happen? Because, for example, if I lived on a lake and I sold a bunch of lake properties, I could buy a pontoon boat and write it off because I would need to take my clients out on the pontoon boat to show them houses from the lake.
Right.
That is a reasonable and ordinary purchase if I were to sell properties like lakefront properties. Now, could I do that in the inner city of Kansas City? They would be like, that's not ordinary.
Reasonable.
Or reasonable, yeah. So you just need to make sure that like the facts are correct and like what works with those facts.
Oh, that's such a great point too.
Yeah.
What other, so kind of in this same bucket of, 10 to 12 transactions a year, what other things do they overlook? Do they miss out on?
So a lot of
it should be thinking about.
Yeah, so a lot of it is just not tracking.
Okay.
Like they're just not tracking expenses, right? This needs to be a separate bank account.
Yep.
If you want a credit card, but we're not like racking it up or paying it off, type of thing. Mileage
Yep.
would be the first one. Home office,
Yep.
right? Simple spreadsheet. You can also write off things like if you have a home office, now it needs to be a true dedicated space, right? It can't just be your dining room table. It really
Right.
needs to be an office with a door and a window. But like you also get to write off part of your home cleaning or your, bug treatment or, there's all sorts of things that people don't take care of. Also, the Augusta rule, where you can rent your home up to 14 days a year tax free from your business. Like if you even if you have another small business that you own, you can utilize the Augusta rule to do client events, dinner parties for your business, right? You can use all of those. It needs to be reasonable. Like you can't just say, oh, my house cost me $50,000 a night,
Right.
right? It needs to be reasonable. But those are something super simple that they can do. Also, when you travel for conferences, there's all sorts of stuff that you can write off that I think people just don't keep track of, so they don't ever get to use
And
that
they don't
write off.
right, and that
Yeah,
that's $30,000-$40,000 that they're losing every year,
correct.
compounded over 5 years,
Yes.
like you mentioned. That becomes that flywheel
Yes.
of opportunity
Yeah.
that
And what I'm really big on is having bank accounts set up correctly.
yeah.
So I have, your money comes into a checking account, like your operating account, and then you should every check, you pick the amount. I don't care if it's 10%, 50%. I don't even care if it's 100%. That won't work, but you know what I mean?
Mhm.
It needs to be going to a savings account for taxes so that you are not using like what I hate to see, like, we'll just use this as an example because it's 2025. I don't want you using 2026 commissions to pay 2025 taxes.
Mm,
You will never, ever get ahead,
mm,
right? Because you're just literally selling for half the year to pay the prior year's taxes. You're never going to build wealth that
right,
way. So you need to save that money. Plus, remember, this is a business. This is not a hobby. Business have expenses, right?
right.
And then if you have any sort of I personally have a year, but I would love all agents to have 6 months worth of business reserves, right? Take your P&L, figure out what that average is. It could ebb and flow with seasonality, but I would love, 10 to 20% every check goes into that high yield savings account. Once you hit that reserve amount, you don't have to keep pulling money down, but I would love to see every agent have that because you never know. Sometimes there's a word cash flow,
Mm,
things happen, right?
right,
COVID happens, the shift
exactly.
happens, and you're not ready for it. That way you could still run your business without selling a home, for up to 6 months, a year, however long you have for that. And then I would love if they had another account that they put 10 to 20% in, kind of either for profit or for investments.
As a real estate agent, they're crossing over to that next level of success. What would you recommend in investment world? They're tracking everything. They've done all the things you've mentioned.
Yep.
Where do they go next? What are some of the next pieces?
Yep. So the next one is not like living within your means and your lifestyle, right? We all have it, the lifestyle creep.
Yep.
It's really easy to happen. A lot of times people have never made this much money before. They've never been taught what to do with it. One unfortunate thing about in this business is that we spend so much time teaching people how to make money, right? And we all make money the same. We're all trading time, goods, and services for money, but we don't spend any time on what to do with it on the back end. And guess what? The more money you make doesn't help that stress.
No.
Doesn't help you sleep at night. Like if it's just disappearing, right? It doesn't get better. Like you don't have to sell more houses to get out of this because guess what? You're just going to spend more money. So at that point, a lot of people have to have some sort of reality check
Mm,
on, ooh, I need to stop spending so much money. So that's where you really need to figure out. I mean, you should do this before, but what is your monthly burn rate?
yep.
What does that budget look like? And how do I want this to go? Like, do you want to sell houses until you're 95? Or do you want to start creating cash flow, passive income, help your taxes? I mean, I personally think because we are in real estate, the easiest thing that you
Right.
should be very knowledgeable on is real estate. There's great benefits for that, right? There's the tax benefit, there's appreciation, cash flow, someone else is paying down your mortgage for you. So I always say the first thing you should do is get into real estate
Yeah.
for that.
I mean, there makes that's total sense if you know everything about a asset class and you're the first to touch it, see it.
Yeah, and sometimes if you can't buy in your area, right? Like Kansas City is still pretty affordable based on like rent, but if you can't afford it, then go outside of Kansas City.
Yeah.
Go outside of your area, right? So there's plenty of homes in other states. It's not so scary, I promise.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I talk to a lot of agents that once they hit that next level of
Yep.
success, they have this almost imposter syndrome that really, really hits them hard.
Yep.
And they ask themselves questions like, is this going to be sustainable? Can I keep
Yes.
creating this amount of business year after year?
You do that not 10 years in for that. And so that's the other thing is that you should have it on the business side, but also before you ever make any sort of true investments, I always recommend that you have 6 months also of personal savings, right?
Right.
Like, I want you double covered on business and personal. So you should also have 6 months of personal reserves, like, as a minimum. I personally have 2 years. Like, I could literally live without any income for 2 years in my current lifestyle.
Yeah. And you know your burn rate, you know your monthly expenses, you've got enough cash on
Yeah,
hand
and I'm not
to cover
saying,
that.
like, when I say this, it's not like I want people to live in this lifestyle of, like, I drive a beat up Honda and eat ramen noodles. Like, I want you to live a comfortable lifestyle, and we all have different things that we love. Like, I don't understand designer handbags, and I have friends who are like,
Yeah.
"I wanna buy the newest Louis Vuitton." I'm like, "That's cool, that's not my jam, I spend money elsewhere." So, I'm not saying to live so below your means, but just understanding what that really looks like
Yeah, it's like,
for that.
what's I love how Ramit said he says that. He's like, "What's your rich life look like?"
Yes.
And yours might be handbags, yours might be Lululemon like that. It's all relative to what's important to you.
And I think at that point, when they hit that,
Yeah.
they probably have never made that amount of money before, and guess what? This is when the money trauma starts coming.
Oh, that's such a good point.
This is when you've never made this much money, no one's ever taught you about this. This is when, like, the weird feelings, right, of, like, "Should I even have this much
Yeah.
money? Like, what do I do with it?" And that's where, like, they're gonna need to look
And you see it
into.
all the time. I mean, like, my partner and I, it's like, I grew up in a family where you never ordered an appetizer or soda,
Oh,
right?
yeah. Yeah.
And she did, and it's like,
Yeah.
how do you begin to uncouple what you can and can't do with money?
And
Because it's ingrained.
this is also where it comes in, like, if you have a partner or not,
Yeah.
what's going on with that. Because here was the other problem, like, well, we can talk about my money trauma, I guess, for a minute, is that I grew up in a household that my dad drove a 1988 Chevy pickup truck, and in 2001, my mom said, "I'm going to buy you a new truck whether you like it or not." Like, we're coming
Yeah.
into this century now, right? We had, like, a John Deere motor that I think my dad mowed the lawn with for 25 years. Like, I grew up in a house where you did spend money, but you researched it,
Mhm.
you bought quality, and then you drove it, for a car example, until it dies,
Yeah.
right? So that's fine if you do that, right? I also grew up in a house, like, I'll never forget this. And this is where you need to figure out for yourself, right? Like, what I still can see this trauma coming out. 'Cause sometimes it's hard for me to make a decision on
Mm.
things, and 'cause I, like, overanalyze it. Like, I'm the person that actually walks the entire mall to see what all the options are, and then I go back. Yes. Right? And so it's just like, I didn't realize that until I really dug deep into my own money trauma. One time, I think I was 12 or 13, and that was when, like, Limited Too, we were
Yeah.
all went on Limited Too, and I said something to my mom of, like, "I don't have anything to wear." So, I love my mom. She comes upstairs in my room, and I have, like, this, like, long walk-in closet, and she was like, like, things still had tags on them, like, tags, tags, tags. So she was like, "You wanna know what you're doing when I buy you these clothes and you don't wear them, and then you tell me you don't have clothes to wear?" She started ripping up $20 bills,
Oh,
and
wow.
I'm, like, trying to catch them, and trying to, like, "Oh my god, put them back together." I'm like, "Stop, stop, stop," and she was like, "Well, that's what you're doing." So now I have a money rule that if I don't wear it within the first 2 weeks of buying it, I return it,
Yeah.
right? And, like, that is so instilled in me on, like, Amazon hates to see my returns come in.
Well, it's such a powerful visual, I'm sure, and that emotionally
I have to,
connected.
yeah, like, I keep the tags on everything until I wear, like, so I can return them, but there's things that I grew up with, right? But if you grew up with someone who, like, got money and then spent it all, like, my parents, like, we didn't have cable for a while because they were like, "We've gotta save money," like, so there was things that I learned, like, that you need to prioritize,
Mhm.
right? Like, we didn't go out to eat a lot, but my parents would buy brand new cars when they bought new cars, right? Or we would buy quality. items and use them and to keep them, like to
Yeah.
upkeep them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure.
So, but at that point, when you're making that money, that imposter syndrome is also coming from your internal, like,
That's right.
money traumas, we'll call it.
Yeah.
So they almost need to figure out what that looks like. And a lot of people at that point don't ever have a budget. And so that's when they wonder where the money
Mhm.
went.
Or they feel they either
Obligated
need to give it away
or
or
spend
spend
it.
it because there's this thing that kicks in like, "I don't deserve this."
Correct.
And that's where I see a lot of our agents get
Yes.
to is, "Oh, I've gotta spend it or buy all these things that I never deserved or was
Yes.
ever able to have," or, "I feel bad, so I'm gonna take care of."
People around you or people around you start noticing and they ask you for money. I also see all the time, like, you feel like you need to buy the white Mercedes Benz.
Mhm.
Do you even like Mercedes? Do you even want that SUV?
Yeah.
Right? Like, I'm all about buying, right? My money trauma, I'm all about buying a brand new car. Like, my last Jeep, literally, I had to go buy a new car. Like, it was, I had like 150,000 miles on it. I had a crack through the windshield. The AC didn't work. I probably needed new tires and brakes. But like, it was like, well, I'm just going to drive it until it dies. Right. And then when it did, so the imposter syndrome, that's when you just have to figure out like what the plan is. And at that point, if you don't want to invest in real estate, but you know about something else,
Right.
right? Like some other, like if you know about cars, right? And you're like, I could flip cars or invest in cars. I could invest in like land or invest just anything that you have knowledge about. I'm all for it, right? Like I personally don't have a lot of money in the stock market because I can't control it and I'm not as knowledgeable about I understand how it works. Like I'm in some index funds and actually my dad invested in Microsoft before Microsoft ever took off, right?
Okay.
I also don't want that up and down.
Right. So, Clarissa, I've noticed with some of the agents that come in and talk to us and we coach, they really begin to struggle with imposter syndrome and they realize, I might not be able to make this money forever, or I've never made this much money in my life. And then they suddenly spend it or give it away. What are some of your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it definitely happens because they've never made this amount of money before and they feel like they need to keep up with something or and almost not because they believe in it, right? Like there's
Yeah.
things, guess what? I don't wear my money. I don't drive my money. My money makes money
I
for
love
me
that.
in my sleep. So you don't need to buy the latest car or designer handbags. Now, if that's like your thing, by all means, but it needs to be because you want those things, not because you feel like you need to be keeping up with someone. Because guess what? My freedom of getting to volunteer 3 days a week is way nicer than some Louis Vuitton handbag.
Mhm. That's right.
Yeah.
So, Clarissa, give us some of your best advice for the audience at home. What words of recommendation and advice would you leave us with today?
Yeah, so one thing we didn't talk about earlier was also understanding what noise you can handle in your investment world, right? So I've done a lot of out of state rentals, apartment syndications, things that bring me low noise but still have a return, right? There's kind of like this scale of like the more less noise, less return, more noise. So like
Yeah.
consider flipping high reward but high noise, right?
Right.
But when I was in the height of selling 100 houses a year, I couldn't really add a lot of noise to my life. So that's why I went more of the apartment syndications, out of state rentals aspect to that because I still got the tax benefits and the cash flow with lowered noise, but still a good return. So, and I also feel like you should have things that are kind of like your baseline, just beating inflation, like high yield savings accounts, treasury bonds, I bonds, things like that.
Yeah.
You kind of have like that small return but low noise, and then that medium, and then you can have items that maybe are a little bit more noisier for that. So I feel like you should kind of have an equal amount of money invested in each of those kind of categories for that. Also tracking and then understanding like, hey, having conversations with your CPA or tax strategist on what that happens and like not waiting until January or December 31st to have that
Right.
conversation of making that phone call because there's not much you can do at that point.
Exactly.
Right? So, my biggest advice is to meet with them twice a year. So, normally, I would say, like, May or June because by that time, you kind of know how your year is gonna go,
Mhm.
and you can still adjust, right? Like,
Right.
don't be Clarissa closing on a rental property on the last day of the year, right?
Right.
because then you don't make great decisions for that.
Exactly.
Also, I know it's not fun, but you need to take a little bit of responsibility for your own self, right?
Mm,
Like, you need to understand what you want to invest in and how it works. You can't just rely on other people, right? And hope for the best. And if you don't have your back of house in order, right? Meaning your profit and loss, your bank accounts, all of that, you can't make correct decisions, right? Like, if you don't know
right.
your numbers, like, if you don't know what's in your bank accounts, I talk to agents who are like, I haven't looked at my bank account in 5 years. Like, what do you mean you haven't looked at your bank account in 5 years? So making sure you have that back of house in order to make sure you can make the correct investment decisions, right? Because we all have a threshold. Like, once you hit 25 or 50,000 in those accounts, maybe it's time to make an investment
Right.
or whatever that threshold
Mhm.
looks. See, that would be kind of some words of advice
I
for
love
that.
that.
And also just like double check who you're listening to.
Mm,
Right? Because like,
right.
there's so many TikTok gurus out there,
That's
and
right.
I love TikTok. So, but right, make sure you're, like, fact checking or getting information from multiple sources and not just listening to just strictly one person so that you can make an informed decision
Mm,
for that.
such good advice. Make sure you've got the appropriate noise levels
Yes.
in your business and then in your investment worlds, and then, like you said, make sure that you're diversifying who you're listening to.
Yes,
You've
correct.
got
I think that's a
different
big place is you
voices.
can get, like, just stuck in one lane, right? And so I probably 3 or 4 years ago were like, "Hey, I need to maybe, like, listen to some other people." Not
Yeah.
that the people I was listening to were wrong, but just so I could get a different vision, a different learning experience, right? So that way I kind of opened my horizons to other investments for
It's
that.
good.
Yeah.
Well, Clarissa, where can people find you? Where are you at out there in the
Yeah.
socials world?
I'm Klarissa Skinner McNeely on Facebook. Clarissa sells it all. Clarissa with a K. Instagram. So I'm out on the socials. You can find me on TikTok as well, but I usually enjoy TikTok. Don't necessarily make TikToks. So
I love it. Well, thank you so much,
yeah.
Clarissa, for your time today, for the money story, for all those things, and we look forward to having you again soon.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks.